It's Tuesday, March 10th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. Before we get to the hemp headlines, we've got a few little updates to give you here. First of all, we were doing some data mining on our NORML Activist Alerts page, just trying to take a look at the trends in people that are clicking the activist alerts and sending emails and letters to their elected officials, urging them to end adult marijuana prohibition. We've seen quite a spike in the traffic here with over 2,500 letters sent out last week alone. This is a huge amount of traffic compared to what we've seen in the past. And so as we looked at the figures, we decided to take a look at who is generating all of these numbers. And what we found is since January 31st of 2002, we had one of our NORML online activists who sent 2,790 letters to elected officials. And our second place online activist sent 2,186 letters. Both of these online activists have been now rewarded with a NORML lifetime membership and all the little free stuff that goes along with it, like the Rick Steves Day Pack and the NORML Retro T-shirt. But even if there wasn't a prize to be had, it's just a good feeling knowing that you're participating in democracy and doing something to stand up for your rights. So thank you to those great online activists, and here's encouragement for the rest of you to start sending those letters and clicking on that activist alerts map. Now, speaking of activist alerts, we told you about a bill in Kentucky, Senate Bill 5, which was a zero-tolerance drugged driving bill, would make it a DUI crime if you are caught with any detectable amounts of marijuana in your system, even if you had smoked days before, even if you weren't impaired when you were caught. Well, according to our activists out in Kentucky, it looks as though politically this bill just might be dead, even though it's not officially off of the Kentucky legislators' plates right now. Apparently, it's not too politically advantageous to be seen as a legislator in Kentucky who wants to arrest and imprison innocent people. So we'll keep our eye on that one, but it looks like that bill might have been squashed, and we thank all of you out there in the NORML audience who sent your letters and calls to those legislators in Kentucky. Also, in the Daily Audio Stash blog, I want to point you out to an op-ed written by Kevin Sabet, who's a hardline drug warrior, formerly from the Clinton and Bush administrations. We'll talk a little bit about it in our Cannabis Science segment tomorrow with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. But if you'd like a look at how someone can cram in more reefer madness into a 600-word op-ed than anyone I've ever seen before, check out the Stash blog and read the rather lengthy debunking of Kevin Sabet's op-ed. Now, coming up on the Daily Audio Stash, we've got your hemp headlines, as mentioned before. Plus, today is our Government at Work Day. So today we're going to be speaking with Matt Simon from the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy with the results from the hearing on House Bill 648, the act to bring medical marijuana to the state of New Hampshire. And then in our second interview segment, we're going to be speaking with David Cappiello and two of his board members from NORML, Connecticut. And they're talking a little bit about what it's like to start a new chapter in the state of Connecticut. And our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by Marijuana Music Awards, features Variety Tuesday today with a song called Gangsta Party by Dobry Momchita, featuring The Individuals. The Berlin Wall of marijuana prohibition is starting to crumble, so grab a hammer and a pick. It's time for your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. ABC News 2020, 100 Years for Selling Medical Marijuana. Charlie Lynch learned the hard way that Prop 215 didn't protect him when federal authorities raided his home and small business in Southern California in March 2007. Lynch recalled, quote, "I hear the banging of my front door. I opened the door and about 10 to 15 agents with shields, bulletproof vests, guns, and masks, they came barreling in." End quote. Drug Enforcement Administration agents seized 30 pounds of marijuana from Lynch's business. The action wasn't a surprise to San Luis Obispo County Sheriff Pat Hedges, who had been investigating Lynch for about a year. Lynch's lawyer, John Luttrell, said, quote, "They sent in undercover sheriff's deputies to go encourage Charlie to break the federal law. In every case, what they found was that his employees always verified doctors' recommendations. No one could manage to get anybody, Charlie or anyone that Charlie was working with, to dispense marijuana in a way that violated state law." End quote. After a year, the sheriff handed information over to the federal government's DEA that Lynch had been selling marijuana. Even though California allows medical marijuana, federal law classifies marijuana as a Schedule I narcotic, the same as heroin. Under federal law, Lynch was no different from a common drug dealer. Reuven Cohen, another of Lynch's lawyers, said, quote, "Marijuana under federal law is a more serious narcotic than crack cocaine." End quote. Lynch was hauled into federal court, which meant that his attorneys could not even mention the state law that permits the use of medical marijuana. Lynch was convicted and faces up to 100 years in federal prison. This is a snippet from a story appearing this Friday, March 13th, on a special hour with ABC News 2020's John Stossel called Bailouts, Big Spending, and Bull. Stossel also tells the story of teenager Owen Beck, who lost a limb to cancer and sought medical marijuana from Lynch's dispensary. That teenager who bravely fought through chemotherapy had a doctor's recommendation for cannabis, the only medicine that would ease the pain and nausea and allow him to eat. And the federal prosecutors framed it as if Lynch was the local high school kid's dealer of choice. My favorite line, though, comes from the profile of cancer survivor and Grammy-winning singer-songwriter Melissa Etheridge, who also procured her medical marijuana through Lynch's dispensary. Etheridge said, quote, "When it comes to the medicinal use of this herb, it is nothing about getting high. You're not getting high. You are trying to get to a place of normal." End quote. A place of normal, indeed. Baltimore's Santa Bob, 62-year-old Hall of Fame educator, former town commissioner, broken over marijuana. The Baltimore, Maryland suburbs has a 62-year-old resident named Robert C. Chance, but most people in the Charm City area know Robert by his nickname, Santa Bob. Every year, Santa Bob lets his white beard grow out, and he opens up his Harford County tree farm for families to come find their Christmas tree. Santa Bob is a retired teacher who was elected to his school system's Educator Hall of Fame and a former commissioner in the nearby town of Bel Air. He was well known throughout the community as a staunch ecologist, advocating recycling and running nature camps for children. He was so well known and respected that all the county judges had to recuse themselves from the case brought against Santa Bob when his tree farm was raided for another kind of trees. Harford County detectives and investigators from the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration raided Chance's Environmental Evergreens tree farm in May and found 19 growing marijuana plants, more than 1.5 pounds of packaged marijuana in freezers, and about 33 grams of hallucinogenic mushrooms. According to a statement by the Harford County Deputy Sheriff in federal court documents, that quantity of marijuana suggests an intent to distribute. Chance told the Baltimore Sun in an email he had used the marijuana to relieve pain that stemmed from chronic arthritis and a bout with prostate cancer. He wrote, quote, "I have always been the independent, self-sufficient type, and just didn't want to deal with buying from anyone," end quote. The story doesn't say what Santa Bob's using the mushrooms for, but it seems clear that Santa Bob's use of marijuana was for medical reasons. If Santa Bob were living here in the Rose City instead of the Charm City, he might be a little over his possession limit, but police could only seize the amount over 1.5 pounds. For his plants, if only 6 were over 1 foot tall and budding, he'd be in compliance. But unfortunately, Santa Bob lives in Maryland, so this respected community leader is nothing more than a no-good druggie. He had been charged with 5 counts, including possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, and had faced a maximum of 20 years in prison. Prosecutors and Chance's attorney, Augustus Brown, later agreed that he would serve no more than 6 months in jail. After his arrest, the federal government filed a civil complaint to seize Chance's house and farm under a law that allows the taking of land used for illegal drug dealing. Chance was allowed to keep the property and to continue living there, his attorney said, after paying a $35,000 settlement in December. Brown told the court, quote, "That amounts to nearly all his life savings," end quote. Because of his exemplary background and because he completed a 26-week outpatient recovery program, Santa Bob received a 2-year suspended sentence and was placed on 18 months of supervised probation. Chance appeared chastened as he addressed the court. He said, quote, "I have been broken. My body of work has been stained. I've embarrassed my family and friends, and I've taken this deeply within my soul. I vowed to maintain abstinence and to work hard on my farm, and I hope to continue to be a spokesman for the planet," end quote. No, Santa Bob, you have been vilified for trying to treat yourself medically with, quote, "one of the safest therapeutically active substances known to man," end quote, at least according to the DEA's administrative law judge, Francis L. Young. The only stain is that left on the Constitution when masked agents violate your home and property over the plants you grow to treat your illness. The only embarrassment should be felt by those of us who maintain this prohibition that breaks good citizens and good men like Robert C. Chance. Chris Brown and Michael Phelps nominated in Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards. The kids' cable TV network Nickelodeon broadcasts a Kids' Choice Awards every year. This year, the festivities are hosted by Dwayne Cougar Johnson. I found it a little ironic that an award show aimed at kids would feature Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps as a nominee for Best Male Athlete. Don't the people at Nickelodeon realize that Kellogg's, maker of kid-friendly cereals and snacks, deemed Phelps' bong-smoking incident so heinous it had to drop its contract with him for fear that the taint of his egregious private adult actions would stain the sterling reputation of the maker of Fruit Loop cereal straws? Or I guess they don't, actually, because the awards appear to be sponsored by General Mills, the maker of Cheerios. Would Phelps have made the Nickelodeon list if he hadn't given numerous mea culpae for his sin of smoking pot with other adults in private? It's hard to say, but maybe not. After all, Nickelodeon doesn't seem to have an issue promoting an alleged domestic batterer, Chris Brown, in its nominations for Best Male Singer. New York Times, end the Rockefeller drug laws. The holdup on repeal of the harsh Rockefeller drug law is the end of mandatory sentencing for second-time nonviolent violators. The editorial board of the New York Times has taken the stand that the end of mandatory sentencing for nonviolent offenders is necessary to restore judicial discretion to drug cases. The holdouts are well too familiar to those of us in the reform community. Mr. Patterson and his allies in law enforcement believe that would send the wrong message to the communities where drug crimes are committed and to the police officers who have worked hard to make those cases. They also fear that without mandatory sentences, some offenders might ignore treatment sanctions. But the Times editorial board thinks the Assembly bill adequately addresses those issues. The Assembly bill provides for judicial discretion for a well-defined group of second-timers, while preserving lengthy mandatory sentences for second-timers with either histories of violence or records of having committed sex crimes or sold drugs to children. The provision protects the public safety by making sure that dangerous offenders go to jail. If you live in New York, contact your state chapter of NORML and help make your voice for reform heard.
Dear Mr. President, last November you were elected on a platform of change. You promised the country reform on the political system. Well, let me tell you what NORML.org and many other Americans want changed. Marijuana laws. It was estimated that America made its 20 millionth arrest for marijuana possession this year. You want a real economic problem? How about the amount of money being spent on simple possession arrests? Incarcerating people costs taxpayers around $23,000 per year, and NORML estimates that up to $10 billion a year are spent on enforcement for mostly nonviolent offenders. Now let's imagine what would happen if marijuana was legal. Not only would we save billions each year on enforcement, but imagine the economic boost. You would produce jobs growing, selling, and tax dollars coming in from the regulation of marijuana. I'm not saying let people loose to sell on the streets. Put government regulation in to tax and control its sales like alcohol. Street dealers are the problem, not a guy with a gram in his pocket. Put in harsh punishments for people who drive under the influence, and stop punishing people who enjoy marijuana safely in their home. Mr. President, if you really want change, legalize marijuana.
Tuesday is our look at your government at work, here at the Audio Stash. While the inevitable re-legalization of cannabis hemp will have to happen at the federal level, the steps leading to that destination take place at the state and municipal levels. We focus in on the initiatives, bills, and amendments regarding cannabis across all 50 states, and what activists like you are doing to enact a positive reform to our cruel and outdated marijuana laws. If you're working hard to make an impact in your city and state, please email us at stash@norml.org and let's share your local efforts with the worldwide cannabis community. Together, we can affect our government at work.
Pollution rises high into the sky. How can we still deny the truth?
We just got the note from Matt Simon from NewHampshireCompassion.org on the results of their hearing on New Hampshire House Bill 648. And Matt, how's everything going up there?
It's going real well, Russ. We had a great hearing yesterday, despite an unexpected snowstorm that made things kind of difficult for people getting there. But that's New Hampshire for you. The hearing lasted about 2 hours and a half, and we had 7 patients testify.
It only felt like 12 hours.
Yeah, it actually, it didn't. And that's the thing. I sit through a lot of hearings, and a 2.5-hour hearing is, we're nodding off by the end of it usually. Nobody was bored. at this hearing.
Well, that's good.
I mean, the legislators were all paying attention. Dozens of people who came stayed and watched and listened, and we heard some amazing stories from some people who were really telling their stories for the first time, and it was compelling. We made a really good impression.
A lot of times when people come to these hearings for the first time to testify, they're a little nervous or scared. Did that affect some of the people testifying, or how'd they do?
Well, I get nervous every time. It gets a little easier each time, but they all did amazing. I mean, I was so proud. I mean, I've met with all these patients over the last few months. I've met with some of them several times and talked about this and, tried to help them prepare and be ready, but they just did an amazing job. And, I couldn't be any happier with how everything came across at the committee. The only opposition was from, the chief of police who represents the Chiefs of Police Association, and from the Attorney General's office, and nothing they said was even remotely persuasive. And I think the committee is really going to see this.
Good. Did the committee have a lot of questions for the people who are testifying, and could you discern their basic leanings on this bill?
Absolutely. There's a lot of good questions and some, not so great questions. We know that 2 or 3 of them that are definitely against us, and on a 20-member committee, there's going to be a couple hard-line prohibitionists.
Sure.
So but the one representative who was very troublesome 2 years ago and asked all sorts of hard questions and was kind of a jerk, this year he was more subdued. He asked a lot of questions, but they were more polite, and he didn't want to come. He knew better than to come off as a jerk to these patients and to the doctor who came from Vermont, and the people who came out in the snow who were just trying to support this bill and trying to do the right thing and get these people off the battlefield.
You mentioned the doctor from Vermont. What was his specialty, and what did he tell the committee that was so compelling?
He's a neurologist, and he had been involved with the medical marijuana effort in Vermont, had studied it extensively, and it was great. It was just amazing to have him there, Dr. McSherry from Vermont, and we were just so grateful to him for driving 2 hours or whatever in the snow to come. And his expertise meant a lot to the committee members. They asked him a lot of questions, and he was extremely well informed, and that was icing on the cake. Absolutely. That's
excellent. And so, what's the next step for the bill? Is it headed to a vote sometime soon?
Yeah, that's already been scheduled. March 18th will be the executive session. The 20 committee members will vote, and their recommendation will go to the floor, and the 400 of us will vote on that. Probably, the 25th would be a good guess.
Wow! So by the end of this month, we'll know for sure what's happening at least in New Hampshire. Is it the House or Assembly?
In the House. Yeah. April 6th. By April 6th, everything has to be done and over to the other chamber.
All right. Well, we'll keep in touch with you to figure out what's happening with that. We really hope New Hampshire can become one of the medical marijuana states. If folks want to get involved in the Granite State or nearby to help you out, how can they contact you?
Well, Matt at nhcompassion.org. Certainly visit the website, sign up for our newsletter, and be informed. Find out what's going on. I'm happy to hear from anybody. I've been hearing from a lot of people the last couple of days since we've been on the news and such, but it's great. It's great that so many people support what we're doing and have so many stories to share.
Well, good luck for everything and your efforts there for bringing medical marijuana to the state of New Hampshire. Matt Simon from New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy, also available on the web at nhcompassion.org. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, thank you, Russ. Have a great one.
You too.
Hello, this is Webb Hubble. Life insurance is now available for responsible marijuana smokers. For years, responsible marijuana smokers have not been able to access affordable life insurance products. NORML uniquely supports cannabis consumers. 2 carriers have already agreed to offer all of their traditional life insurance products at all levels without excluding individuals who smoke marijuana responsibly. Help NORML and help yourself. If you've been declined for life insurance are paying above market premiums, or simply want to know what now may be available in the way of insurance for marijuana smokers, contact me at info@mclaughlinonline.com or simply call me at 202-293-5566.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. We have a treat for you this Variety Tuesday with Gangsta Party by Dobry Momčita from Bulgaria, featuring none other than a stash favorite, The Individuals. Gangsta Party is an exciting song with a unique mix of rap from both Bulgaria and Chicago. Dobry Momčita had a hit song with Nasi Ottuk in Bulgaria before teaming up with The Individuals to create Gangsta Party. The Individuals are winners of 11 Marijuana Music Awards and nominees of the 2009 Doobie Awards. Gangsta Party is nominated in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards as well. Check out Dobry Momčita at myspace.com/Dobry Momčita, that's DOBRIMOMCHETA, and The Individuals at myspace.com/TheIndividuals420. This is Dobry Momčita featuring The Individuals with Gangsta Party.
Oh yeah, it's a gangsta party and we do it fine. Only weed, popping bottles, bitches on my mind. That's right. We the players and we play that game straight. You can see us on the beach, chillin', puffin' Mary Jane.
Екстракт от Mary Jane, дим излиза от устата ми. Пъв, дай ми без чувствам премазване. Под краката си нямам никаква почва. 3 часа сутринта, а деня ми едва започва. Виждаш ли ме? Аз не виждам нищо. Налей ми още уиски, пред очите ми се въртят прекалено много филми. Аз ли съм или не съм? Вътре ли съм или вън? Летящ летен сън. Моите хора чакат вън. Валим светлините и улиците са наши. Щом ние изпухваме, идвай с нас, баси. Откъде си ме ме, тук откачаме. Със слънце и море, горещо лято е. Да си поръчаме още от тая яка мацка. Да я пушиме, докато ни смачка. В хладилника чака още бира. Вече съм забъркан, оставете ме на мира.
I'm G'd up from the feet up, fire the weed up, keep the heat up, ride with a G cuz, party like a gangster, do like I does, come to Gangsta City, get a dose of this shot love, or you could get treated, little homie, cause I'm plugged, I'll show you where the spot's at, show you where the block's at, show you how to spit cold lyrics over hot tracks, blowing like the Hawk beat, back up off me, G's in attendance, all about the business, playing on dummy, that'll get your little wig split, I keep the piff lit, stay on pimp shit, I walk gangsta, talk gangsta, homie, I live this. Get it crackin', quit acting like it can't happen. TCO one demand to make it happen. Stop playing like if I start, I won't stop spraying. Leave you in your whole block laying, that's gangsta.
каски хулиган. Да, е то факт насами, аз ще ти подам. Паля, дърпам, пуша, в устата става суша. Картината се губи, но успявам да надуша. Някои пият, други дусат, аз обичам Мери Джейн. Винаги се грижи тя за моя гейн. И не ме бе, кефилите или не. Аз съм хай, никак не е зле.
I get big bread from Shot to Bulgaria. I keep big toys, boy, we a barrier. Big bread got big bud, the big smoke. Big bottles is popped off, it's no joke. Big chips with the big chicks with the big hips. Big lips and the big ticks and the big six. Get money, I did this, my business. State to state, round the world, dog, get in this.
Ooh, yeah, it's a gangsta party and we do it fine. Only we poppin' bottles, bitches on my mind. That's right, we the players and we play that game straight. You can see us on the beach, chillin', pumpin' Mary Gangsta party. It's a gangsta party. It's a gangsta party. It's a gangsta party. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, the individuals and the good fellas. Criminal, Master G. We international, baby.
And that's gangster.
I'm Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. Have you heard about the new super pot that's supposedly 20 times more potent than your father's Woodstock weed? Don't believe the hype. Marijuana's THC potency has always varied, even in the 60s and 70s. And the drug czar's numbers are full of, well, exaggerations. While no intoxicant is harmless, cannabis is non-toxic and far safer than alcohol. No matter how much you smoke, of whatever potency, you cannot die of a marijuana overdose. Potency is irrelevant anyway. More potent pot just means you smoke less of it, meaning less harmful smoke in your lungs. This is a prime example of harm reduction in action. Besides, the government already allows the prescription of THC pills. Its commercial brand name is Marinol, and it's 100% potent. Meanwhile, the federal government won't allow dying people to use natural marijuana, no matter what the potency? Does this make sense to you? Learn the facts about pot. Visit NORML.org today.
Looking around the United States, we're now going to go to the Nutmeg State, all the way up to the state of Connecticut, and we're speaking on conference call with David Cappiello, Michael Collins, and Dominic Vita from the Board of Directors of NORML Connecticut. And gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So let's get the information out first to the people who might want to get involved with NORML Connecticut. You're a fairly new chapter, so what's your web address and how can people get in touch with you?
Well, that's www.normalct.org. That's the primary informational tool for our organization. We also have a Facebook NORML Connecticut page as well.
Okay. Now, David, what led you to want to get involved in starting a NORML chapter?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm very frustrated with the lack of progress in Connecticut over the last 10 years regarding marijuana law policy. I think we should have made a lot more progress than we have over the past years. And now with the budget crisis, we're basically in an economic depression. Now is the perfect time to push for change that's fiscally responsible, and it's also morally responsible. And it's the duty of citizens to change bad laws.
I like the way you put that, because a lot of people don't think of it that way, that it's a citizen's duty to make this a better country for all of us, and I think that's a good way to put it. Now,
entirely patriotic.
Exactly. And speaking of
we believe, among other things, that the current prohibition of marijuana really is, well, the war on marijuana and the war on drugs in general is a war on people of color.
Well, yeah, you just look at the statistic. That's easy enough to see. Now, two of you, Michael and Dominic, you are both medical marijuana patients. I imagine that would also be a lot of the reason why you'd want to get involved with this. Michael?
Absolutely. I have diabetic neuropathy, which is, I have diabetes, I've got it bad, and I have chronic pain in my legs and feet, and also, of course, my two big toes became infected about 2 years ago, and I almost lost them. And but there's still all the residual pain in the feet and legs that causes difficulty for me to walk, and also glaucoma, which is diabetes related.
Okay, and
you know, I just can't understand why marijuana is not legal to treat people's pain. I mean, I think, as far as I know, morphine is very addictive, but it's they don't take it away from from patients who need it.
Right. Now, Dominic, David had mentioned to me also that you're a veteran of the Iraq War, and we've got a lot of veterans now that are going to be coming back with, you know, severe brain injuries. That's kind of the excuse me a second. We're going to have a lot of these soldiers coming back with severe brain injuries, and that's kind of the signature injury of the Iraq War. What's your experience with medical marijuana, and how much could this help our soldiers?
Well, the way I see medical marijuana, I see that having a tremendous benefit for not only the troops coming back from this current war, but also the guys from, and not just the guys, but the men and women from the first Gulf War who've been suffering with Gulf War illness for the past 18 years. You know, I don't have the traumatic brain injury. My symptoms more resemble the Gulf War illness that we see coming out of the first Iraq War. You know, my problems are a multi-symptom complex, which, you know, is now 6 years that we've been unable to identify anything about it. I've pursued this over the past 6 years with both my family physician and the VA, and really we're coming up with nothing. The most that I've been able to find through personal research, it seems that the multitude of symptoms that I suffer from correspond with Gulf War illness. If you're not familiar with that, it's a wide range of symptoms, abdominal pains, joint pains, which is what I suffer from, is terrible abdominal pain and joint pain. And I mean, I'm 28 years old, and I get up in the mornings and I can't use my hands. Now, there's really no reason that should be occurring.
Yeah.
I've got a recommendation from my doctor to use marijuana as opposed to going on to the narcotics. I mean, we've tried every drug out there, from antidepressants to barbiturates. You know, and I refuse to go on the OxyContin, and I refuse to take morphine. To me, that's no life. So I have used marijuana to treat my pain on a daily basis now for about 6 years.
Wow. You know, and we've got to do something here to end this silly prohibition so that the people like yourself who can really use this medicine can get a hold of it. And Dominic, again, also, I want to thank you so much for your service to our country. And I want to take it back to David here for just a second and talk a little bit about the history of medical marijuana in Connecticut, because, you know, people will look back to a couple years ago when Governor Rell vetoed the medical marijuana that made it through the Connecticut legislature. But actually, the people of Connecticut spoke up a long time ago about medical marijuana. Tell our listeners about that. They might not know this.
It's a little-known fact. There are actually, in many states, medical marijuana laws on the books that were passed prior to the landmark law in California in 1996. But the earlier laws generally required doctors' prescriptions, or they initiated experimental programs. None of these laws are very effective. The Connecticut law, as far back as I can trace, comes from the 1981 time period, and it specifically, it's still on the books, it exempts patients who are dealing with chemotherapy or glaucoma. The problem is it requires a doctor's prescription, and as we know, the DEA has threatened doctors to take their license away if they write a prescription. So the newer laws, starting with the law in California in 1996, only require the doctor to make a recommendation, and that's what we need in Connecticut to have an effective law. The older law is symbolic, but it's important because it shows that this isn't new to Connecticut. This goes way back. We understood that there was medical value back in 1981, and we understand a lot more about it now.
Absolutely. So what are we doing in Connecticut, bill-wise, to try to reintroduce medical marijuana to the state of Connecticut?
Well, there are two bills that have been introduced. There is, aside aside from the decrim, which is separate, there is House Bill 5175 and also proposed House Bill 6156. 6156, an act authorizing the medical use of marijuana, was introduced by Representative Penny Bakayaki in the 52nd District, and I believe Dominic has reached out to her personally. And also there is, 5175, which is, I don't have the co-sponsor, co-sponsored by Mary M. Mashinki, 85th District. One of the problems is that we need to hear more from the politicians. We're having trouble getting in touch with them on the issue to get them to actually speak at public events. But we hope to change that in the near future.
You mentioned also a decrim bill. What's going on with that?
Well, the decrim bill, actually, I've noticed that there has been some action on that. As of today, or not as of my printout today, it looks like on February 25th, it was referred to the Joint Committee on Judiciary. There are also an additional 2 co-sponsors that have signed on. So now we have 4 co-sponsors on that bill, which is good news. And I think that kind of goes in line with the budget problems. They want to unclog the court systems.
Yeah. Now, Michael or Dominic, did you guys have something to mention as well?
Well, this is Michael. I was going to say that, we, like so many states, including California, the state government in Connecticut is in deep financial trouble. There's a huge deficit. And the governor has, we have, unfortunately, a Republican governor here, Rel, who is proposing all sorts of cuts. For example, she's just announced that they're going to not provide any more paper or ink for pens for state government workers, no more ink cartridges for copiers. She's canceling the maintenance contracts on these pieces of equipment. They're not going to vacuum the carpets anymore for the offices where the state workers
oh, my.
are. And yet, with all these cuts, and after I finish, I know Dominic will want to has a very interesting comment about cuts that have been made. There's no cut in the war on pot or the war on drugs, because that's part of the right-wing Republican agenda. There's no cut there.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, she's saying that state government workers, I don't even know why they'll be in the offices anymore. They can't have the tools to do their job.
I have to say, I used to work in state government back in Idaho, but I can't imagine bring your own paper to work day. I just can't imagine it. Dominic, you had something about that too?
Not about that. For me, it's on a different level. We were just about to get a sick veterans registry set up here in Connecticut that would track the health of returning veterans, which for me is really important because I've been trying to figure out what's wrong with me for 6 years now. They needed $165,000 to start this program, and Governor Rel cut it back in June in the first round of budget cuts. But there's no cuts on the war on drugs or the war on marijuana.
Yeah.
So I took that pretty hard.
And to think of the, not just the money that we're spending on the war on marijuana, but also the money we're leaving on the table from the taxation regulation of what's a very popular commercial crop. It's just insane.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, before we wrap things up here.
There's a story in the Sacramento Bee last week about, I think it's a state senator state assemblyman Tom Amiano from San Francisco has proposed totally legalizing marijuana in California and taxing it. And, of course, that state government is also in deep financial trouble. And I think they projected they'd get billions a year from the tax revenue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Marijuana in California.
All the states.
Every state in the nation.
Yeah, there's no reason we should be leaving this money on the table, especially in this terrible economic crisis. We saw it back when alcohol prohibition ended during the Great Depression. They just couldn't afford to lock people up for their vices. And I think that's going to happen with marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it on a deeper level than that. I see this black market marijuana money, and I see it going to fund terrorist operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, which are then killing our troops.
Uh-huh.
Instead of letting this black market flourish, we should just legalize marijuana and take that money and give it to our children and fund their education, so that way they can emerge through this economic downturn ahead of the game.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, gentlemen. And before we wrap things up, I want to give you a chance if you had anything further to say to our listeners, and want to remind everyone also that the website is normalct.org. Let's start with Dominic. Anything further you'd like to say?
I just want to say to all the NORML listeners out there is get out there, be active, be involved in your local government. That's the best way to enact change. Go out there and be a pot patriot, and let's make this change, and let's make America better.
Well put. Michael?
Yes, I've been a gay activist, and the movie Milk is very popular now. A lot of people are seeing it, including a lot of straight people. And one of the things Harvey Milk did that helped so much for the incredible progress that's been made on that issue is for gay people to be out. As difficult as it is to be out to their relatives, out to their immediate family, out to their friends, out to their co-workers. And I would say the same thing about pot. We have to be out. We have to tell people and talk it up so that the right wing is not able to then demonize us to make us look like some sort of strange dope fiends or something.
Well
because
put.
Every survey shows that somebody who knows somebody who's out is much more tolerant and accepting than somebody who doesn't know anybody.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I've said that many times. And David?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I anticipate that marijuana will be legal in Connecticut within the next several years. I think that the budget crisis will make that a certainty at some point in the next few years. That's my personal prediction. I hope I'm right. But the way for people to get involved is also to join us at our events. We held our first event, which was very successful, at a library in Fairfield County back in February. But we're also planning some major events at the Capitol, which we'll be releasing details about on the website shortly. The first such event will be on April 20th, 420.
Well, that's excellent. We'll make sure to promote that as soon as the time comes around. Keep in touch with us, David, and we'll make sure all our listeners know about it. David Cappiello is the president of NORML Connecticut, Michael Collins the treasurer, and Dominic Vita the vice president. Thank you guys for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another one of our cannabis quotes, this one from the activist Steve Cubby, who's available at kubby.com, who said, quote, "The war on drugs was never ever about drugs. It's about bigotry. You can change the law, but changing the prejudice and fear of bigots who hide behind the drug war rhetoric is a far more challenging task. It's time to expose the drug war and the bigots who promote the ideology of zero tolerance." End quote. Steve's absolutely right. We can look at the history of marijuana prohibition, rising up from the racism against Mexicans and blacks to the 60s when it was used against the young people who advocated for nonviolent change. It's time that these culture wars were ended and we treat people with respect and our criminal justice system with some measure of justice. There's no reason to lock up responsible, adult, tax-paying marijuana consumers. Thanks for joining us here for the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.